Hey everybody, it's Paul Pape of Paul Pape Designs. I'm a designer and fabricator of custom collectibles, but I'm also a full-time artist who's been making a living doing art for about 17 years. So I thought I would spend a little bit of time today to explain to you exactly how to figure out what to charge. This is a question that I get asked a lot by a lot of different artists, and it doesn't necessarily just mean like sculpture or regular art. It can also mean any kind of cosplay, or honestly, it doesn't even need to apply to art. As long as you are doing something in which there is time spent and materials used and you don't know what to charge, this is going to give you the easiest way of figuring it out. Now, keep in mind, this is just a suggestion and a rough outline. You need to adapt this to work best for you. But this is the easiest way to give yourself some math to base the idea on, so that you have somewhere to start rather than just pulling numbers blankly from the air. All right, let's get started. High five. All right. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to figure out what your cost of living is, what the minimum wage is where you live. Okay, this is going to change for everybody. So you need to know what the minimum wage is. Now, you ask yourself, why do I need to know the minimum wage of where I live? Because that is, by all accounts and purposes, around where you are, what it costs for you to be able to live, have a sustainable wage. Okay, so that's minimum wage. Now, I also understand that minimum wage does not necessarily mean that is a living wage, but this is a good place to start, because when we start working for ourselves and we start charging for the work that we do, an hourly rate, a good place to start is minimum wage, because you don't want to work for less money than you can get working for a minimum wage job. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, so the first thing we need to do is know what your minimum wage is. For me, where I live, it is $12 an hour. Okay, so we're going to write number 12 right there. That's going to give us our median, our minimum wage, the median amount of money that we need to earn. Okay, now above that, I'm going to write the number 5. Now from here, I'm going to scale down 4, 3, 2, and 1. And I'm also going to write up from there 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, so 5 is going to be our median ground. Now what that means is that that is going to be the amount of, I want to make sure that's in focus. Okay, that's going to be the amount of skill that we have. Okay, so this is our skill tree. This is a skill scale. All right, skill scale. That's what this is. 5 is where I like to say that you have just enough knowledge to be able to sell your product, to be able to start selling. That's what a 5 is, okay? Below 5, if like you have no experience, you don't know what you're doing, you've never done something before, you would have a 1 or a 0 amount of knowledge. 5 is I'm to that point where I believe I can start selling my product or my services and make a living at it. Now, above that is where our skills increase. The longer you do something, the more that you should charge for it, because you are now better at your job. Okay, so the next question is a personal question, and this is something that you have to ask yourself. It's very important that you do some introspection on this part of it. It's a hard one to gauge, and what this is you have to ask yourself on a scale of 5, which is I'm just beginning to sell my stuff, I understand that I have enough knowledge to be able to sell a product, and 10 being I'm an expert in my field. I've been doing this long enough that others say that guy is the expert, or that gal or whomever is the expert. Between there, where do I feel like I fall? Be honest with yourself, okay? Because this is going to affect your bottom line, okay? It's going to affect the ability to get jobs, to be able to get paid for them. If you come out of the gate and say that you are a 9, all right? Oh, I've been doing this for a couple years, I'm at least a 9. And then you try and start selling stuff, people are going to recognize you're not. Okay, you've got to be honest with yourself. You got to take this into consideration. I would say that most people who come to me asking me how to do this fall between a 6 and a 7. All right, so it really, but take this into consideration. If you've been doing something for 40 years, and you are at the top of your game, and you still don't know how to figure out what to charge, then put yourself up at a 10 or a 9. Feel free to do that, but be honest with yourself, because it's going to affect you in the long run. Okay, so I'm going to say that we're going to start at a 7. So I'm going to judge myself as being a 7 in this scenario here, okay? For each number above 5, we want to add $12, okay? So a 6 would be 24, a 7 would be 36, 48, 60, and 72. This is your hourly rate, Now, you may be looking at this and go, wow, $72 an hour for an hourly rate is really, really steep. No one's going to pay that. But here's what you need to know. The more that you do something, the better you get at it, the faster you're going to be. Okay, so if somebody is a level 5 skill level, okay, it might take them 40 hours to do a job. At a level 7, it may take you only 25. Well, why should the person at a level 5 earn more money taking longer to do the same job than somebody at a level 7? They shouldn't. So what it should do is it should allow you to earn the same, if not a little bit more money, because you're faster at it and you're better at it. Also, the longer you do something, the better you become at it, your skill in that will be better. So you'll actually have a better product. So charging more money for that, even though it takes less time, is a sound business idea. Okay, so you got to stick with it. All right. So we're going to say that we're a 7, so our hourly rate should be $36 an hour. Now ask yourself, what is the amount of time it's going to take to do a project? Now, hopefully, if you're at a point where you are a 5 or above, you've done the job enough that you have a rough idea about how long something should take. Now, the rule of thumb in any kind of job in which there is labor involved is you think to yourself, how long is it going to take? It's going to take me 20 hours. Okay, and then the idea is that you add 10% to that, because inevitably something's going to go wrong and you're going to lose the ability to have a solid grasp on the amount of time it takes. So to say it's X amount of time plus 10%, give or take, okay? So I'm going to say it's going to take me 22 hours to do something. 22 hours. All right? And so then that would equal, now this is where Paul gets his calculator out because he doesn't want to have to sit here and try and do math. So we have 22 hours times 36 equals $792. That's our labor, okay? Might seem steep, but it's really not, okay? If we take a 40-hour week, because if it takes 22 hours here, and we'll say 44 hours, okay? 44 times $12 an hour, we're at $528, okay? Now, there is an increase in price there. That increase in price is because you're getting a better product. You've been doing this longer, okay? The other thing that we need to take into consideration is materials, okay? So if this is our labor, then we need to take into consideration materials. Materials are the materials it takes to do the project. Now, I get asked a lot. I'm a painter, okay? I don't go out and buy all new paints, all new brushes every time I paint. Or I'm a sculptor and I use clay. Same thing. I don't go out and buy all these things. Do I charge for that material if I've already got it sitting around? And the answer is yes. You just don't charge the full amount. If you're a painter and you know that you're going to use a dozen different colors on a paint project, or maybe even 2 dozen, charge for 1 or 2 colors so that you can replenish your stock. You've got to keep that in mind. Always charge for new canvases. If you're going to do something in a sculpture and it needs a base, always charge for the base. For sculpting tools or for paint brushes and stuff, buy yourself 1 brush. If you think that, I've got a collection of 30 brushes lying around, or I've got a bunch of sculpting tools lying around, buy yourself 1. If you're a carver, buy yourself a knife. Add that into the cost, okay? These material costs, because eventually your tools wear down and you're going to have to replace them. And if you haven't been charging for them because you already have them lying around, well, then you're out those and you eventually have to make up for that money somewhere else. So always charge for a little bit. If you're doing a project in which you don't have any of the materials lying around and you've got to buy them, don't go out of pocket on that. Include that material cost into the project. All right. So we're going to say the materials for the project are going to be $48. Okay, that's going to be the material cost for this project, this theoretical project that I'm working on. I'm going to add these numbers together. Now, so we have $792 plus 48 is going to give us $840. Okay, this is our labor and our materials. Now, you might be saying to yourself, but Paul, I'm the artist. Why do I need to charge labor? Okay, well, there's a couple different reasons for that. The first one being is that you are the labor, but say you've taken a job, you've accepted the money or you've accepted the contract and they expect the project to be done, and then you're struck ill or you lose your hands, okay? I know theoreticals and all that stuff, but say something happens in which you personally can't do it, but you're under obligation to actually complete the work, so you're gonna have to job it out. If you didn't charge for labor, who's gonna pay for that work? If you're only charging for materials and a little bit extra for yourself, then when you have to pay someone else to do this job for you, then you're out money. You've literally lost money on the job. So you have to charge for labor. So labor and materials are fixed costs. So we have labor and we have materials. This is our $840. Now here is the most important part, and I can't stress this enough. The most important part of doing this is this next part. We're going to take this number here, the addition of labor and materials, and we're going to multiply it by 20%. Okay, we're going to multiply that number by 20%. Why? One word: profit. Okay, if you're not earning a profit, you don't have a business. Okay, if you're just breaking even, you're not actually building and growing your business. You need a profit built into this. Profit is the largest contributor to you growing your business. Profit can be used to sustain your website, to buy incidentals that you don't necessarily use per project. Say you're a painter and you need a new easel. You can't charge a company or your client for a new easel. That's on you. So these things, advertisement costs, going to conventions, buying flyers, any of those kind of materials, things that come as part of a business, you need to send that money out. Well, if your labor is already spoken for and your material cost is already spoken for, where is that money coming from? That money comes from profit. Okay, and 20% honestly is pretty low as far as profit goes. Most companies charge 50 to 100% markup over the cost of the piece. But since we're talking about art, we need to keep our expectations a little bit lower. So we charge 20% profit here. So we take our 840 times 20%, and that's going to give us $168. We add that back in to 840, and that's going to give us $1,008. Okay, and there we go. That's going to be the cost. That's how we figure out what something that takes 22 hours and costs us $48 in materials at a level 7 should cost. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, wait a minute, nobody's going to buy that for me at $1,000. Okay, and you know what, you might be right. Some people would balk at that price, but here's the thing. If somebody has an hourly job, and they're not an artist, they're doing something that is like a normal 9-to-5 job. They sit at a desk or they go to an office, they do something like that. And they go in and they work their 40 hours a week. Okay, we'll even say they work a half a week. They get their 22 hours in. And then one day somebody, they work that and they get that same check. They get $1,000 every single week because that's what they're used to. They work their 22 hours, they get their $1,000 a week. And then one day their boss comes up to them and says, excuse me there, I know you do the same work week after week after week, and we really appreciate it. I think you do a great job. That's why we keep you here. But this week we're only going to pay you $500 instead of your $1,000. Why is that? Well, it's just what I think that we should pay you, or that's what we think you're worth. Would that person who has that regular job, that 9-to-5, that desk job, would they be like, okay, sure? No, they wouldn't. So why should you? Okay. This is why it is important that when you self-assess what your skill level is at, you take that into consideration. Don't lower your hourly rate because you think that people won't pay for it. You'd be surprised if you have a good product and you are up to a point of you're a 7, an 8, or a 9, people will pay for that. That's what they want. They are hiring you because of your skill set. All right. Don't let someone say that you aren't worth what you're worth. Even as an artist, just because you do something fun or something that you enjoy as your job does not make it any less a job. Okay, this is your full-time career. It just happens to be that it is something you like. Now, just because you have a job that you enjoy the process of or the creation of does not necessarily mean that it's always fun. It's not. All jobs are work. Okay, so this is what it should cost. Now, that is how I figure out a rough idea of where to start. Now, a lot of people say, okay, but that's great and all that, but this person said that they only pay me $500, okay, for the project. So then we're going to do something else, okay? This is my favorite part. This is math. It doesn't lie. It tells you exactly what you're earning here, okay, what you should charge. My favorite part to do, though, is to reverse it. When somebody says they're going to pay you only X amount because they think that's what it's worth. So let's take this same project where somebody says instead of $1,000, I think it's only worth $500. So let's break that down. So we're going to take our $500 here. Now the first thing that we do is we remove the profit. Okay, so we take 500 times 20% is $100. So we deduct $100 because, again, if you're not making a profit, you're not in business. So that leaves us with $400. Well, we already know up here that our materials were $48. Okay, so we need to subtract another $48 because the material cost is the material cost. Okay, so 400 minus 48 is 352. Okay, that leaves us $352 for labor. All right, so now we know that we put in 22 hours worth of work. All right, so we'll divide that 352 by 22, and that leaves us with an hourly rate of $16. Okay, that's okay. It's a little bit above minimum wage for you in your area. You know, it's not even quite to a 6. Okay, so it's kind of like a 5.5. You know, is that livable wage? Possibly. You know, is that worth your time? I don't know. Is it? You know, take that into consideration. One job at this rate, you know, to basically make up for this job here, if you held out for this job, would take 2 of these jobs. So to do this exact same job twice at a lower rate is going to get you the same amount of money. Okay, is it better to hold out for the larger project? That's on you. Okay, but what typically happens is I find out that people are doing jobs for $100, $200 because they feel as an artist they need to take whatever work they can get. So we'll do the same thing, $200. And this happens a lot in things like cosplay, because cosplay are projects that are being used usually only once, maybe twice at a con or something like that, and somebody needs something, all right? So they start with their $200, and we take that $200 times our 20% again, that's minus $40. That's going to leave us with $160. It's the same thing. We minus our $48, and that's going to leave us with, I just don't want to do wrong math here, $112. And we divide that by 22, and that equals $5.10 an hour. Okay, $5.10 an hour. Okay, so this job here, which you should be making $1,000, but you took it because you just needed that little bit of extra scrap, or you're trying to help your friend out, or they're going to give you some great publicity, or it's going to be a portfolio piece, that kind of thing. You end up making $5 an hour. And in a place where it's cost $12 an hour in minimum wage, you might as well go get that minimum wage job. Okay, now, the other thing that people ask me about is they're like, well, what about if I want to do something and it's a portfolio piece? I want to spend a little extra time on it to make it really kind of special so that I can have it for your portfolio. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. But what you're going to do is you're going to spend extra labor on that. When you go to your bidding of your job, take into consideration your normal amount of time. And then if you want to add extra hours onto that where you're making it a little extra special for it, that's fine. Don't charge for those, okay? That's a publicity fee or an advertisement fee, all right? Account for that in there, all right? Don't dumb down the basic amount of time it would take you to complete the project. If you want to put on some bells and whistles at the end, that would be the freebie. The other thing that I get asked a lot is I do X amount of work. I'm a sculptor and I work primarily out of clay, but somebody would like me to sculpt something out of wood or carve something out of wood. It's a similar process. I'm familiar with it, but I wouldn't consider myself a level 7 or whatnot. What do I charge for that? Well, then you go back to your scale and you work down the numbers there, okay? So what you'd want to do is you say, well, normally I'm a 7, but I'd say that my skill level with wood carving is probably like a 4. Okay, well, when you start going below 5, you want to start eliminating some numbers. The number or the amount of money here, but it's not as drastic as the doubling that we do up here, or the adding of 12 to here. What we do is we start subtracting 2 off of each one. Okay, so this would then be a 10, an 8, a 6, and a 4. Okay, honestly, you should never be working at a 4. Okay, 1, it's kind of an insulting amount of money, but 2, if you only have a 1 level of skill in something, you shouldn't be trying to sell it. Okay, pass that job on to someone else. But typically you can find yourself sometimes at a 4, maybe even a 3, 3.5. Okay, and this is what I would call the educational discount. Okay, where you're learning a skill, so you're not going to charge as much. It's going to take you a while. There might be some trial and error. Okay, but you might not charge as much to get up there, and that's typical, especially in an artistic venture, because you might be doing something that you've never done before, but it's very similar to some of your other stuff. So that's it, guys. Really, it's really that simple. Math is math, and it doesn't lie. And in the 17 years that I've been doing this, whenever I show anybody this formula, I have never gotten any pushback on math. Okay? Because when you see the numbers laid out like this, and you explain the situation much like I've explained it to you, anybody who's purchasing something will understand that you're not just pulling a number randomly from the air. You actually have a legitimate reason to stand behind the quote that you give them. If you want to negotiate a little bit in there, that's on you. But remember, when you negotiate down your fees, it is a cost to you. It affects your bottom line, because what you're doing is you're taking money away from your labor and your skill. So make sure that you take that into consideration if you want to negotiate. Make sure that you're getting something out of it. Don't ever do anybody a favor. That's not what a job is for. Again, if you worked at a desk, or if you had a normal 9-to-5 job, you wouldn't compromise your hourly rate on a daily or by job basis. So don't do it here when you're doing your art. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask me. I'm always live at twitch.tv/Paul Pape Designs, or you can drop me an email or message me or anything else that you'd like. I'm happy to answer any questions and walk you specifically through this. Take care, and if you have any other questions, let me know. Thanks.